Welcome back. The Taliban claim they have killed 150 Afghan soldiers in a car bomb attack on a military center in southern Helmand province. In a statement, the group spokesperson said dozens were also wounded in the attack. The spokesperson said the military center has been completely destroyed in the ambush. But Helmand governor's spokesman says only 5 security officials were killed in the attack. The spokesman said 5 other personnel were wounded in the attack in Nahr-e-Siraj district. The hostilities between the fighters and Afghan forces are a direct threat to the Doha peace deal with the US. Spain has recorded 167 new fatalities in a day, taking the tally to nearly 25,500. Iran's daily death count has risen by 74 to nearly 6,300. More in this report.
On Wednesday, German Chancellor Angela Merkel and premiers of 16 federal states will discuss coronavirus restrictions for schools, kindergartens and sports. Berlin reported 679 new cases and 43 deaths, bringing the country's total to past 163,000. Russia reported over 10,500 new cases in the past 24 hours, a slight decrease from the day before. China reported 3 new cases, all among people returning from the overseas, bringing the total to nearly 83,000. Japan's national broadcaster reports that Prime Minister Shinzo Abe will extend the country's state of emergency until the end of May. About 15,000 people have been diagnosed with the virus in Japan and more than 500 have died. Globally, the number of cases from the new coronavirus has crossed 3.5 million, killing over 247,000 people.
Pakistan's COVID-19 death toll has risen by 14 in the last 24 hours, taking the tally to 476. There are now over 20,800 confirmed cases in the country after 698 more tests were conducted overnight. The country has reported 5,635 recoveries from the viral disease so far. The provinces of Sindh and Punjab have the highest number of confirmed cases at 7,882 and 7,646 respectively. Speaking on measures against the virus, Prime Minister Imran Khan has said the lockdown currently being implemented in the country needs to be lifted. He said this was necessary for people to earn a living. However, he said the move had to be made carefully, so the precautionary measures taken by the government will not go in vain. Earlier, the Prime Minister spoke to his Ethiopian counterpart Abiy Ahmed Ali and commended the country's efforts against the pandemic. In another news, Pakistan summons Indian diplomat to convey its rejection of India's baseless contention regarding the Supreme Court verdict on Gilgit-Baltistan. The Foreign Office said Indian claim over Gilgit-Baltistan cannot cover up atrocities being committed in the occupied valley. The statement said New Delhi would not succeed in diverting the world's attention from its state terrorism in occupied Jammu and Kashmir. The Foreign Office said it was clearly conveyed that New Delhi's claim over occupied Kashmir as an integral part of India had no legal basis. It said the Indian diplomat was told the entire state of Jammu and Kashmir is a disputed territory and is recognized as such by the international community. It was underscored that the only resolution of the Kashmir dispute was faithful implementation of UNSC resolutions. Islamabad said, pending the resolution of the dispute, any unilateral Indian actions in the occupied valley were illegal. Pakistan's President Dr. Arif Alvi has represented the country at the virtual summit of the Non-Aligned Movement. In a statement, the Foreign Office said, the special summit has been convened by Azerbaijan President Ilham Aliyev. President Alvi sought support for developing countries in dealing with the pandemic's impact. The Foreign Office said President Alvi has drawn attention to an increase in Islamophobia resulting in the scapegoating of religious minorities. He said the situation in the occupied Kashmir has aggravated in the wake of the pandemic. The president further said that Kashmiris are being denied access to medical supplies and high-speed internet. The online session will conclude with a political declaration of the movement uniting against President Donald Trump says the U.S. will produce a coronavirus vaccine by the end of this year. In an interview, President Trump said several pharmaceutical companies are close to developing the vaccine. More details in this report.
As the coronavirus continues to spread around the world, teams of experts are scrambling to develop a vaccine to protect millions of people from infection. According to experts, finding a vaccine is a collaborative effort and is expected to take around 12 to 18 months. But Trump said his administration is putting hard to develop a cure. He called the work Gilead Sciences is doing on remdesivir as an example of a potential game changer.
We are very confident that we're going to have a vaccine at the end of the year. By the end of the year, have a vaccine.
Meanwhile, Australia's new National Science Agency says it is testing 2 potential vaccines on animals to protect humans from the deadly virus.
The cells in the lung of the ferret have proteins on their surface which are very, very similar to humans. So it seems that viruses that infect the human lung also seem to infect the ferret lung.
In the UK, a new drug developed by scientists to treat COVID-19 patients is being trialled at University Hospital Southampton. The drug uses a protein called interferon beta, which bodies produce during a viral infection.
UN Chief Antonio Gujarat says vaccines against COVID-19 must be treated as global public goods and should be affordable for all. This was given credence by WHO Secretary General Tedros Ghebreyesus, who said the key challenge isn't developing vaccines, but how to distribute them. The two top officials said this at the start of a global pledging conference, which aims to raise at least $8 billion for the fight against the coronavirus. Ghebreyesus said none of us can accept a world in which some people are protected while others remain exposed. The UN says a return to normal life will only be possible with a vaccine. Earlier, in a jointly signed open letter, European leaders pledged support for a plan to raise $8.3 billion to find a coronavirus vaccine. China has refuted U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo's accusation that COVID-19 was originated in a laboratory in Wuhan and called for evidence. State media said the Trump administration continues to engage in unprecedented propaganda warfare. It said the U.S. administration is also trying to impede global efforts in fighting the COVID-19 pandemic. Earlier in an interview, Pompeo accused the Chinese government of stonewalling any investigations and refusing to cooperate with experts. But he did not dispute U.S. intelligence agencies' conclusion the virus was not man-made or genetically modified. Meanwhile, Britain's Defense Secretary said China has questions to answer over the information it shared about the outbreak. But in an interview, Ben Wallace said a post-mortem over Beijing's role should come later. Iran says the U.S. efforts to extend arms embargo on Tehran are illegitimate. The Foreign Ministry statement comes after U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo's attempt to push arms sanctions on Iran indefinitely. In a televised news conference, Foreign Ministry spokesman Abbas Mousavi said Iran's reaction to America's illegal measures will be firm. He said Tehran is not seeking to exit the 2015 nuclear deal, while Washington is not a member of the deal anymore. Iran has gradually rolled back its commitments under the accord since the United States quit. The Indian government has refused to share details of the PM CARES Fund for COVID-19 formed by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. On March 28, Modi announced this fund, although his government had already formed a relief fund for the pandemic. In addition, the PMO has also refused to make public details of high-level meetings on COVID-19 and on the decision to implement a lockdown. It also declined to reveal correspondence between the Ministry of Health and the PMO in this regard and files related to COVID-19 testing. The office says the application contains multiple requests on numerous and varied topics, as a result of which the information could not be provided. The government asked the applicant to submit separate requests for all questions he asked in his RTI query. 37 more personnel of the Indian Border Security Force have tested positive for coronavirus, taking the total number of cases to 54. The health ministry has recorded nearly 1,400 deaths and over 42,500 infections in the country. In a statement, the forces said fresh cases were reported from a unit of the 126th Battalion in Delhi and from Tripura. It said the unit has a total of 94 personnel and 5 test reports are awaited. Earlier, 20 officers from the Indian Navy contracted the virus while on duty. Indian police clashed with migrant workers in the western state of Gujarat as authorities relaxed lockdown to stem the spread of the coronavirus. Police fired tear gas shells and used batons to disperse migrant workers during clashes. Over 1,000 stranded workers seeking help to return to homes in states across India were gathered on the outskirts of the city of Surat. The industrial and diamond processing city has suffered incidents of labor unrest since the lockdown began. The nationwide lockdown, extended twice since it was adopted on 25th March, is being eased in some areas, but the government said it will run until 17th May. The tally of infections stands at over 42,000 with more than 1,300 dead. In Libya, the UN-recognized government says it has conducted airstrikes on 7 oil tankers belonging to militias loyal to renegade General Khalifa Haftar. A military spokesman said the tankers were hit in an airstrike in the Al-Qaryat region, 400 kilometers south of the capital, Tripoli. The tankers were en route to the strategic city of Tarhuna to reach Haftar's militia. Earlier, the government of National Accord conducted 3 airstrikes against Haftar's forces at the Al-Watia airbase near Tripoli. The GNA also gained an ally when April Haftar commander Ashraf al-Mayar announced his loyalty to the Tripoli-based government. In Egypt, the military says that 126 suspected militants have been killed in operations in the Sinai Peninsula recently. It said 15 of its men have died or been wounded. The statement came 3 days after the military said 10 personnel were killed or wounded in an attack near Bir al-Abd. ISIS had claimed responsibility for the attack. The Interior Ministry later said 18 suspected militants were killed in a shootout near Bir al-Abd. Egypt has experienced a spate of militant attacks since the army's ouster of President Mohamed Morsi in 2013. A Syrian business tycoon and cousin of President Bashar al-Assad has slammed the practices of the regime security apparatus against his businesses. More in this report.
In a video on social media, billionaire Rami Makhlouf said regime security forces arrested his employees. He said this was despite the fact all the services that his companies had provided to those apparatuses. Makhlouf pointed out that the regime asked him to distance himself from his companies and obey instructions. He said his firms were the largest supporter of the regime's security forces during the country's civil war. Makhlouf is often considered as the artery of the Syrian government's economy. He is believed to be one of the richest businessmen in Syria, using his kinship with Assad to make a fortune. The Syrian economy has seen a significant decline since the outbreak of the uprising and subsequent military operations.
Welcome back. Germany and France have reopened 2 of the 11 currently closed border crossings. Nonetheless, both countries are upholding random checks to try to reduce the spread of the new coronavirus. A statement said decision was taken after the State Interior Minister of Germany's Baden-Württemberg region held intensive discussions with French authorities. In March, doctors in eastern French cities of Mulhouse and Colmar warned that the health system was at breaking point. Meanwhile, Italy is easing some of its restrictions, with deaths at their lowest level since just after its lockdown began 2 months ago. In the UK, the government is expected to review the lockdown at the end of the week. South Korea says it will reopen schools in stages starting from 13th May, as the daily number of cases has fallen close to 0 in recent days. European leaders have pledged support for a plan to raise $8.3 billion to find a coronavirus vaccine. The UK government has drafted a plan to ease lockdown measures and allow workplaces to reopen. Reduced hot desking and alternatives to social distancing where it is not possible are among the measures being considered. Prime Minister Boris Johnson plans to reveal his roadmap out of lockdown on Sunday. The plan urges employers to minimize numbers using equipment, stagger shift times, and maximize work from home. It recommends hygiene procedures, physical screens, and use of protective equipment where 6 feet distancing is impossible. Cabinet Office Minister Michael Gove assured there will be a phased approach which allows the government to monitor the impact of easing restrictions. A London court rules hearings for the US extradition case against WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange will resume in September. The trial was originally scheduled for later this month but was postponed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Assange's extradition case began in February for a week before being adjourned until 18th May for another 3 weeks of arguments. Last week, the concerned judge said it will not be possible to recommence the hearing this month because of coronavirus-related restrictions. The exact date for the trial's resumption is yet to be announced. A venue where holding the hearing safely amid the ongoing pandemic also has to be announced. Last week, Assange's partner Stella Morris said his life was at severe risk from COVID-19 in prison. The Australian journalist says the charges against him are purely political. Venezuela's government says it killed 8 people and arrested 2 during a foiled marine incursion. Interior Minister Néstor Reverol said the mercenaries were attempting to enter the country from Colombia. In a televised address, he said the group landed on a beach in the port city of La Guaira on speedboats. Reverol said the mercenaries planned to assassinate leaders of the government and create chaos. Venezuela's opposition has dismissed the allegation, saying the apparent incursion was staged, while Colombia's government has rejected any link to the incident. The Venezuelan military was on a heightened level of alert after foiling the attack. As a result of the coronavirus pandemic, cinemas across Iran have been closed, but film fans in Tehran are now able to enjoy screenings at a drive-in cinema. More in this report.
Iran's health ministry says the trajectory of coronavirus infections has started a gradual downward trend. The country has begun to ease restrictions with plans to reopen mosques and schools in areas that have been consistently free of the virus. After months cooped up inside, Iranians can now watch movies at a drive-through cinema in the capital's Milad Tower complex.
Due to coronavirus spread, the cinema industry has suffered a lot, and it should be a little bit more developed by holding such a ceremony. And with these programs, the cinema will survive.
Social distancing rules still apply with only 2 people allowed per car, and all cars are disinfected on entry. Some attend for the drive-in experience, while others take the opportunity to see friends following weeks of lockdown across the country.
It feels good after 2 months of quarantine and staying at home because we were depressed. This program became an excuse to hang out with our friends and to prove that we can have a normal life and be present in society while maintaining our health.
Iran has already lifted a ban on intercity trips and malls, with large shopping centers resuming activities despite warnings by some health officials of a new wave of infections.
China Fashion Week has taken the 2020 show online in context of the coronavirus pandemic. A dozen brands are set to live stream full runway shows on China's largest luxury e-commerce site, with 170 brands participating in the week overall. Further details in this report.
Spotlights, strong beat music, models strutting down the catwalk. It all looks and sounds like a normal runway show, except for one major difference: there is no audience. This is the new look for China Fashion Week's Autumn-Winter 2020 shows, which were postponed from March until May due to the concerns about the coronavirus pandemic. While some designers pre-recorded runway shows, most are participating in live stream sales from May the 1st to 7th. Viewers will be able to communicate with designers and place orders.
I am quite excited. We finally presented our new collection as we wished, though I feel a little bit of pity because there is no audience. People can't come to the show and see the details of the clothes. The design concept can't be explained face to face, but we have the live stream so the audience can watch it on TV.
A designer says COVID-19 changed all of her original ideas and plans for the show. She said her staff has been working around the clock to modify designs and clothing since January.
I think all designers who participated in this show should be grateful to the Designers Association because they created a new format for the runway show, allowing every Chinese designer taking their products to the world. This is how I feel about it. I must seize this opportunity to show our Chinese culture.
Shanghai Fashion Week and Guangdong Fashion Week also moved their shows online since the pandemic began. Guangdong show hit a peak of nearly 1 million viewers, with average sales of each show reaching nearly $200,000.
US President Donald Trump has threatened to terminate Phase 1 trade deal if China fails to buy $200 billion of additional American goods and services. Trump stirred up a trade war threat during a virtual town hall from the Lincoln Memorial in Washington. Trump said China's President Xi Jinping only agreed to the deal due to trade tariffs imposed by Washington. He said tariffs have become at a minimum the greatest negotiating tool ever devised that were never used before. Phase 1 deal between the US and China ended tariffs on about $155 billion worth of Chinese imports. In exchange, China pledged to buy over 2 years at least $200 billion of additional American goods and services than it did in 2017. Due to COVID-19, China's ability to make purchases has been significantly damaged, which led to the country's first economic contraction since 1987. Trade talks between Britain and the US will begin via a video conferencing call tomorrow. Prime Minister Boris Johnson's spokesman said London wants to strike an ambitious free trade agreement with its biggest single trading partner. A video conference call will be held between British International Trade Secretary Liz Truss and US Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer. The first round of negotiations will last for 2 weeks and will involve 200 officials, while the future talks will take place every 6 weeks. British ministers say they will drive a hard bargain as they seek to lower tariffs on exports and boost trade in services. But Labour warns food standards and workers' rights could be sacrificed. The UK left the EU in January and is now negotiating future trading terms with Brussels and other major economies. US stocks have declined following growing tensions with China about the origins of the coronavirus outbreak. Billionaire Warren Buffett's admission that he had dumped his airline shares has also crushed major US carriers. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is trading lower by about 0.75%. The S&P 500 has shed about 0.5%. The Nasdaq Composite is trading marginally higher. Meanwhile, oil prices moved higher after growing optimism about recovery. The global oil demand is expected to recover modestly from April lows as countries ease some lockdown measures. We're taking a short break, but stay tuned for more news. Now let's look at the weather from around the globe. This is all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.